I think it's just trying to do what the airlines have been doing for the last few years, right?
Yeah.
So you have to pay more for priority seating, or you have to pay more for a window or an aisle. So I think the hotels are just looking at that model and saying, like, how can we squeeze incremental value out of selling a guest room?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I think it's funny that, because it sounds like a very grandiose idea, and in concept it sounds very awesome and like, oh, this is going to revolutionize the industry. But then you look at your own hotels and you realize, like, this is an industry where we can barely figure out room type up charges sometimes. Straight line availability becomes an issue, and for example, I have one property that uses dynamic packaging, and that alone is an operational nightmare. So I'm just trying to envision or imagine a scenario in which we have 50 different attributes with one single room that we're trying to price, and to me it sounds like it's more so chaos.
Yeah, I think, and if we compare it, let's compare it to the airline industry, because I think that's where they're getting the idea.
Yeah.
So I think there are some key differences where attribute pricing works really well in the airline industry, and we might run into some trouble in the hotel industry.
Yeah.
So one is, I think airlines act in more of a oligopoly model where there's not nearly as much competition. And due to that, they can get away with doing some penny pinching and doing some ancillary revenue things where people pretty much throw their hands up and say, okay, in the airline industry. And in the hotel industry, that is much more service oriented. They might be running into some issues where the guest feels like, oh, now I have to pay $10 to be on floor 20.
Yeah.
Right? Or I need to pay for a fluffy pillow.
Yeah.
Shouldn't every room have a fluffy pillow?
Exactly. And
so, yeah, I think that's problem number one. I think problem number two is that every flight is its own entity. But like you said, with length of stay, that's a whole new variable, and you're going to run into a lot of operations issues.
Yeah.
So straight line availability, now, hey, this guest paid extra so that he's on the top floor and he has a mini fridge. Well, what happens when normally you want to shuffle around the room so that you can hit your perfect sellouts, and now the puzzle gets much more complicated because you can't move John Smith because he needs the 20th floor.
Yeah.
And he's throwing off your entire Tuesday, Wednesday stays. So I hate to be a negative Nancy. I think the industry, it's smart. I think we need to look for ways to get more ancillary revenue. I'm not so sure opening up this world of these small incremental fluffy pillow add-ons is the right answer.